In April 2024, for the second time in recent memory, a total solar eclipse passed over the continental US. After driving to Idaho for the 2017 eclipse, I immediately looked up when the next one would be and began making plans to travel across the country. Despite 2024 seeming as far away from then as 2017 seems from now, the day did eventually arrive. 2 days before the event, Amy and I boarded a plane at the Long Beach Airport, which is one of the smaller airports, and then after a 1-hour flight, a 4-hour layover, and a 3-hour flight, we arrived in Tennessee where we were staying. Side note, never trust expired Dramamine. The next day, we stocked up on supplies after hearing warnings of massively increased travel numbers, so we were preparing to be stuck in the car for who knows how long, and sure enough, on the 9.5-hour drive back, we were glad we did. Then, at 4:55 a.m. on the day of the event, myself, Amy, and her brother John were up even before the sun to load up the car and hit the road for the 2.5-hour drive to the path of totality. And though I drove through unfamiliar roads hindered by fog so dense I could barely see more than 100 feet in front of me, when we arrived at our destination, we heard that many people who left even 10 minutes later than we did not make it, which therefore made me grateful for that fog. We ended up finding a campground along the Mississippi River. It was the perfect place to park and wait for the show to begin. When we arrived, the campground was moderately full, but there was a steady stream of RVs, trailers, and trucks that quickly filled the campgrounds. With several hours to kill, I greeted some of the other Umberphiles and got to know them a little bit. We swapped stories and geeked out over our gear. One of our neighbors declined to speak to my camera, but I was fascinated by his story. He was traveling alone, and he drove to this campground by himself from San Francisco, 3 days of driving 12 hours straight, just to be here, in the right place, at the right time. Most people also declined to speak to my camera, but I did have a lovely conversation with my other neighbor. How far did you travel to get here?
We came from Grand Haven, Michigan, so I'd say that's probably a few hundred miles at least, right? Somewhere around there.
A few hundred miles?
Yeah.
And how long have you been here?
When did we arrive, Diane? 2 or 3 days ago?
Friday?
Yeah.
Friday. So you've been camping out here since Friday?
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's intense.
Yeah, we thought that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. So show me what your setup is. What are you doing to capture?
Well, this is that is the candid mirrorless like you're using, and got a 100 to 400 zoom with a 2-time extender, so maximum focal length of 800 millimeter. And then this is they call it a sky watcher, so it'll track. Once you line it up, it's just timed with counteracting the rotation of the Earth, so that it'll follow the sun or keep the sun in the frame of the camera.
Wow.
This is new for me because in 2017 I did it without this, and I spent the whole time readjusting the camera to keep it in the frame. And,
I did literally the same thing.
Did the same, and then the eclipse was over, and I couldn't remember what, I spent the whole time worrying about shutter speeds and f-stops. So this time, hopefully. And then with this one, I'm going to, I'm keeping it because it's all black. You got a lot of sun, so I don't want it to get too hot. So this, I'm just going to shoot video. This is a 500 millimeter, and this lens has set up the same as like a telescope. It's a mirrored 500 millimeter.
Oh wow!
I can't remember what it's called. So what we'll do with this is I just want to shoot some video and kind of show the rays as they're moving.
With an hour yet to go, I decided to explore the campground a bit. I was fascinated to see the grounds filled with people, camping out, tailgating, enjoying life. There were barbecues and tents and camping chairs. There were fishing poles and bonfires. And there were more across the river. In recent years, there seems to be more and more things dividing us. But every so often, something comes along that is bigger than ourselves, and those kinds of things bring us together as a community of humans, all experiencing the same thing at the same time. As I walked the campground, I overheard many conversations like the one I had had with my 2 neighbors. There was a family that flew in from Australia, and there was another gentleman who lived only an hour and a half away and debated whether it was worth the drive from the 99% coverage that his home would experience to the 100% totality that this campground would have. Afterward, I heard that man say through tears that he was happy he made the drive. Because yes, the difference between 99% and 100% is substantial. The contrast between these two families stuck out to me. One family that flew halfway around the world, and a man who almost couldn't be bothered to make an hour-and-a-half drive, but decided to at the last minute. We so often get caught up in ourselves, in our own comings and goings, our own individual grinds, that we often miss the world for what it is. We tend to compete so much with things like accomplishments and income that we lose sight of the fact that we are all in the same grind together. I'm not even going to say a brotherhood of man, I'm going to say a community of humans. And as majestic as the eclipse itself is, it's things like this that I admire most. Things that bring us together as a community of humans and help us realize we are not alone. We are all here together. But yes, the difference between 99% and 100% is in fact substantial. At 99%, you'll get darkness and you'll get the 360-degree sunset, but you're missing out on the real star of the show, pun intended, the actual ring of fire. There's a feeling of reverence when you first see it. You know you're looking at something bigger than yourself, something majestic. It's truly humbling in a way that most other earthly experiences fall short. Though I'm sure you've heard it 1,000 times, don't look directly at the sun, I should in fact clarify that during the actual totality, which varies from 1 to 4 minutes depending on where you're watching from, you are in fact able to look directly at the sun, because for those precious few minutes, the moon is blocking out the actual light from the sun. You see instead a burning ring of fire around the edges of the moon. And during totality is the only time in which you can actually see the sun's corona and the solar aura with the naked eye. My neighbor described this as a personal gift from the universe. And when I think about all the things that had to happen perfectly in order for this view to exist, I'm inclined to agree. The sun is 93 million miles away from the moon, and it is also 93 million times larger than the moon. That is why, despite the distance, the sun and the moon appear the same size in our sky. The exact same size. And that is what makes this whole thing possible. Think about that for a second. There is no other location in the entire solar system where this view is possible. And if the Earth were just a little bit closer to the sun or just a little bit further away, the whole thing would not work. Personally, I admire the precision of this whole thing as more than mere coincidence. My neighbor called this a gift from the universe, and I think there's more meaning in that than even he realized. We spend our lives desperate to be seen, shouting into the void, "We are here, we exist." The eclipse is the universe's way of saying, "I see you." For a brief moment, we feel like more than momentary specks within an indifferent universe. For a brief moment, we matter. Then, for this community of humans gathered together to watch the show, it begins. The lights fade like the ending of a great movie before the credits roll, and then, like an artist that signs their masterpiece, so too is creation signed by God.